Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In today's video, I got petty revenge on my HOA by paying with over 100,000 coins. Let's dive right into the video. I really hate being part of an HOA, but one time I decided to be compliant with what they wanted from me. So basically, I got a $1,000 fine from them because I had parked my 1967 Mercury Cougar GT in front of my house. Street parking here is totally legal and pretty much everybody else does it. They just all have new shiny cars and not a vintage one like I do. Basically, the HOA got mad about it and I got a letter in the mail with a fine and an explanation. I was being fined for parking the car out front because it was too old and apparently ruined the neighborhood image. I thought that the entire thing was just some petty thing because they did not like my car. I did not want to pay them, but I've read enough stories and news articles where the HOA does win on some blatantly biased cases. I was juggling with the idea if $1,000 was worth the risk of losing my house and even more money on a lawsuit. I did read the fine print of the fine and saw where it talked about valid and non-valid forms of payment. I guess they had people try really weird things in the past because on the list of unacceptable payments were bonds and stocks. I want to meet the man or woman who got a fine from the HOA one day and decided that the best form of payment would be to just give them a stock. If they had a stock worth enough, it would make more sense to sell it and then give the HOA the money. Also on the list of forms of unacceptable payment were credit and debit cards. It made sense, I guess, since they are not a store. Now, under forms of acceptable payment, it was very clear the two options I had. A valid check made out to the HOA or payment in any legal United States tenure. They assumed that meant cash, but since it didn't say cash bills only, I decided to be an absolute a-hole to the HOA. I was going to give them their money and make them regret fining me for my car in the first place. Turning coins into cash is simple, but cash into coins is a little bit more annoying. I had to get so many rolls of pennies that I think I hit up every single bank in town for everything they had, but I had the $1,000 worth ready for them. Well, almost. The coins being wrapped so neat and tidy just were not gonna work for the plan I had. I wasted my own sweet time ripping them all open and dumping them into a large bag, one of those big reusable grocery bags. Let me tell you that those things can hold a gallon of milk and a few sacks of potato without issues. The pennies though were weighing it down so much I thought it might break. Imagine that sight walking in and the bag breaks and pennies fly everywhere, like a flood of coins. It managed to hold though, and I somehow managed to carry the thing all the way to the HOA office, which was in the town hall. They had their own little area and I walked into a bunch of confused faces from me carrying a heavy bag. I showed them my fine and said that I had the $1,000 and I would be needing a receipt. The person behind the desk had no idea what to do and called the HOA president to come down himself. He did, and I was standing there smiling like an idiot. Me, I came to pay my fine. It should all be in here, but I suppose you want to count it before giving me a receipt. HOA president, I'm not accepting that. Are you some kind of lunatic coming in here with all those pennies? You need to turn that into cash or write us a check. Me, well actually here on the fine itself it says that you need to accept any form of valid currency. And this counts towards that. HOA president, not a chance in hell I'm sitting here counting all of those. Me, I mean you can keep the bag if you want. My treat. HOA president, get out and take your pennies with you. Come back with an actual payment or I will take you to court for not paying your fine. Me, and I will tell them that I brought in the money and was refused. If I walk out and you don't take it, I'm understanding that as my fine being forgiven. He made me leave and I was happy that I pissed him off, but a little sad that I had to lug the bag back to the car. I did not know what I was gonna do with them if he didn't take it, but part of me thinks that it would be worth it either way. He was good on his word and did take me to court claiming that I was refusing to pay my HOA fine. I told them how I walked in with the money and despite it being valid payment, it was refused. He even admitted that I showed up and tried to pay in pennies instead of lying that I never tried to pay at all. I showed them the fine and what was listed under valid payments. The judge said that while what I was doing was malicious, no doubt, I was technically in accordance with their rules. We were dismissed and the HOA was forced to count all of the pennies and give me a receipt to prove that I paid my fine. However, that was not the end of things. I felt weird even afterwards, like something was not right about the fine in general, so I got a lawyer who specialized in these things and he told me that he did not think the fine was actually valid at all. Before I knew it, I was back in court, but this time a judge was looking over the fine and trying to determine if it should stand or if they had to give me my money back. HOA, he was parked in the street. Judge, was he blocking a driveway or in a no parking area? HOA, no, but we told him that he couldn't have his car there before and he continued to do it. They had not told me anything in the past regarding my car. Judge, is there no street parking according to the guideline that you are fining him on? HOA, we find him on a guideline that requires residents to keep their property tidy. His car is old and having it parked out front will drive down property values and discourage new people from moving in. The judge had to explain to the HOA that just because my car was vintage, that did not mean that they could force me to park it in a garage. He said that the fine was illegal and they could not charge me for it, so in the end the fine actually ended up getting destroyed and I did not owe the HOA a single penny. Pun intended. They now actually owed me my money back, but unlike their fine, the courts were more specific in how the money had to be given. Since it was going between lawyers, it had to be in a certified check, meaning that even though I had my money back, they were still stuck with all of those pennies. I can just imagine them trying to turn them all into cash and the pain it would be for them. It was almost like a double dose of revenge, with them clearly angry about it. And the next one is a story from r/ripe stories, our own subreddit where you can post your own stories, and it is titled Renter Put a Family in the House, posted by user TrixieCat64. A few years ago, my brother and I inherited a 3-floor building, each floor with its own flat, and it was rented out back in the 90s. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I forgot to mention, if you haven't already, I would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel, because I would love to reach 120,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. However, as this house also has a nice garden in front and our family used that frequently, when we visited that building, my grandparents decided to make the cellar a bit livable. So 3 of those cellar rooms got isolated and tiled flooring. This is the cellar room that would belong to the flat we used ourselves. Additionally, the heating room got all important installments like a toilet, shower, sink, refrigerator, etc. This was mainly so we had a guest room and my grandma did not have to walk all the stairs for cooking while we were basically living in the garden. Fast forward to recent times, the flat in the first floor was rented out. A friend of this tenant lost his flat, so he decided to put his friend and his wife in our cellar and then called us to inform us. Well, this part of the house is not up for rent though. I don't block my access to the heater room. Also, this is not really a thing where you could consistently live, so now my brother and I decided we had to show up personally at our house and kick the new guy out. So we both took some vacation time for the next Friday and Saturday and drove there. Then we talked to all parties involved and told them that they have to get out immediately or we have to involve police. However, at least this was a decent guy. He also had his own business, so not the typical squatter you find in other stories, and complied after talking and moved out the next day. It was already 10 PM, so I let them stay for the night. The next day we sat down with our tenant again and gave him a stern warning so he doesn't do it again. And yes, with this big breach of contract, we also could have him evicted. Now, he broke down into tears and then we had to calm him down because this was not our plan. We noticed beforehand that he didn't do it for its own advantage, but more out of a good heart. However, he is naive at times. And the next one is titled Crazy Lying Karen is a Sound Nazi. And by the way, Ripe Stars, little trigger warning about this story because OP will talk about his dog having died in the past. And even though there's no really graphic detail, I just thought to give this warning in advance, in case you wanna skip. It was posted by user Elverenblood on r/ripe stories. So I had moved into a new apartment with my little dog and cat and always made sure to ask my downstairs neighbor if he ever heard her, and he said he never heard anything from my unit ever. He moved out after about 4 months and a Karen moved in. At the time, I was 27 or 28, female, who had over 10 years of experience with toxic neighbors and roommates. 2 months after this Karen moved in, my dog was killed by a pit bull as I wrestled to get its jaws open. I still have scars on my fingers from where the pit bull's fangs dug into me as I was prying, and no, I was in so much trauma that I could not bear the idea of killing someone else's puppy when I knew that was a pit bull puppy that was not receiving proper training and he thought killing my dog was playing with a toy. I later found out someone else called and got animal services to arrive, and the owner had skipped out on the unit, disappearing legally and situationally to avoid criminal charges. I need an emotional support dog because of a very traumatic life, and part of that trauma will be related in another story. Anyway, I waited 6 months for a new puppy to be born after searching carefully for breeders I agreed with and the temperament and sensitivity of their parent dogs. I have owned 3 dogs of the same breed, larger Yorkshire Terrier, who are sensitive to mood swings, seizures and other medical conditions more than a lot of big dogs supposedly do. I don't tolerate a nitpicky dog. They are fully desensitized by me in preparation for my future children before this, and it was my first time experiencing the next problem. So my downstairs Karen neighbor had been friendly with me and chatted a lot, but I could tell she was one of those no-nonsense people, and she even tried to give me rules like no noise above me after 6 p.m. when I work early in the morning and would not be home until after 7, which meant I was not allowed to vacuum my own home except on my 1 day per month off of work. Usually those 1 days off were because I was sick from exhaustion, and they were recovery days, not cleaning ones. When she started complaining every single day about how her water was not hot enough and she demanded she should have entitlement to piping hot water, I realized she really was a Karen kind of woman. I let her know that I had adopted a new puppy and that I was going to do extensive training to make sure it was a good little neighbor, but asked her to bear with me. By the time the Karen moved out, she had been under me for 2 years, and I got my new puppy around halfway through that. At first, she would lie to me and tell me that she could never hear my dog at all. I knew my dog barked in separation anxiety from her personality for the first 30 to 45 minutes after I left for work around 10 a.m. and otherwise stopped. 6 months before the Karen moved out, my dog was barking constantly because the Karen would sit on her patio below mine and talk so loudly it was as if she were talking in the middle of my home. I then started getting text messages constantly about how my dog would not stop barking, and when her friend had a baby over, my dog barked so much it apparently traumatized the baby. I told her repeatedly, "Don't talk to my dog or it makes her bark even more." I told her repeatedly how loudly she talked on the patio at 6 to 8 in the morning when I worked a day and a night shift and she was waking me up. She would then claim that I was imagining things as she worked night shift and couldn't possibly be awake that early. I have Discord messages to my friends complaining about her to confirm that I was not crazy, but never showed her. She then tried to claim that my dog was disturbing all the neighbors and barked all day long. At this point, I had realized that she was a very entitled Karen, and thanks to my late hours, I found out her early morning or night shifts were total lies. The hours she would need to be home to impose the 6 p.m. curfew of noise was ridiculous, as she was coming home closer to 10 p.m. When she switched her tune of saying she needed silence in the morning is when she was waking me up at 6 in the morning. At this point, I put up those cameras that are free and use your internet to monitor whatever to your phone. I could confirm that my dog would bark for the 45 minutes at most, and then the only time she barked was maybe 4 or 5 times if someone was making strange loud noises below her. This meant someone pulling a cart or suitcase type bag clicking across the sidewalk, and she would bark until she couldn't hear it anymore, so maybe a minute at most. She had been fully trained with sonic noisemakers, dog whistles training, and even that open door at odd intervals tricks. I refuse to use electric shocks on my little girl or drugs when she's just fine for most of the day with her kitty brother. However, this is when the Karen's lies got even worse, and that is when the construction started. Every day for a week, that Karen was blowing up my phone saying my tiny dog was howling and screaming at all times. She even got the complex ownership to threaten me and tell me to control my dog with training, or else the complex would either evict me or forcibly remove my dog. This is illegal to do in my state, as she is medically signed off on an emotional support dog. I showed the office proof that my dog did not bark every single day, and even witnessed reports that I'd been so stressed I'd actually been taking my dog to work as a caregiver, and she was making my clients really happy every other day, further disproving the Karen's claims. And then over the 2 weeks I discovered that the noises that my dog did make were from the intense roof renovations that were going on and the extensive painting and landscaping efforts that made it sound like people were trying to break down our walls. I fully understood why my poor girl was freaking out. It even scared me so badly that the first time I heard them on the roof, I ran to the office with the sound recording, and they explained the rooftops were being retard. The Karen would not give up, and the last time she texted me, it was something like how, "You need to control your dog. I cannot tolerate her barking at all times of the day and night. I will report you to the office and have the other neighbors sign a petition to get you evicted if you don't put her in doggy daycare or get rid of her." I replied with, "Sure, you pay for the doggy daycare, which is about $75 a day, and then she'll be quiet. Also, I know for a fact that you exaggerate and lie. My dog is with me half the times you claim she is barking, and I know you are friends with your next door neighbor whose dog barks even worse and louder than mine out on his porch. Don't contact me again or speak to me in passing. If you do, I will take this to more legal action," and then I blocked her. And well, a week later the office again tried to say that they were getting complaints, but admitted it was just one neighbor. I had made friends with the office worker, and they actually loved my little dog. I even proved to them that she was only making a small amount of noise the days she was left home, and the stress this neighbor caused me with my new dog, who was supposed to reduce my clinical depression and anxiety, went through the roof. If it were not for my client letting me bring my dog for him to play with, I don't think I would have been able to stay sane. 4 months before Karen moved out, she tried one last trick to force me to deal with my dog her way by submitting a proposal to the Metro City District that I live in, where they order me to cease and desist my dog's noise and that I was not compliant with the required law ordinance. I could tell from the writing that she had exaggerated the time, frequency and duration of my dog's barking, much of which my cameras, which were set to noise sensitive, identified as 2 separate neighbor dogs barking and not mine. My latest dog has a very unique bark with a pitch that is undeniably hers, and is the first dog I ever had with barking or separation issues, so I could easily tell the others were a medium and large barking dog. I laughed at the letter, which said to further enforce the complaint they would require a petition of all my immediate neighbors, all of which said they couldn't hear my dog in comparison to the other barkers and would not likely give their signatures to Karen. I decided if she ever did try anything else, I would report to the office that she had a breach of contract, 3 cats in her house, 2 of which were identical and were grounds for immediate eviction, but I waited to see if she would cross me one last time. I left off the city mandate letter and tossed the letter out after the Karen moved away and never faced any repercussions, but she gave me so many dirty looks. I then started living in my home my way after the text messages that I had sent about 2 weeks prior to getting the notice, and had been vacuuming, sweeping, mopping and doing any other cleaning I needed and wanted to do, ignoring her noise hour demands. I good-naturedly would not do anything after 9 PM, as I consider that normal for neighbors who do not have children in a building that is mostly cement blocks per unit. I'm now very happy to report that the neighbor who replaced the Karen actually loves my dog barks when I go and whenever someone is passing the area to the stairs of our shared entry. She apparently has some sort of paranoia of ghosts, and when they lived on the 2nd floor, she kept hearing footsteps on the roof at night. She says hearing my dog bark at normal loud things a dog should bark at helps her feel safe and comfortable, because my dog tells her if she's hearing things or actually has someone being too close for comfort in our entryway and outside our mutual porches. The best part is we did a noise test and she could not even hear my vacuum, my carpet shampooer, my blender or my TV, even when it was at a volume that was painful for my ears. So yeah, that Karen was such a dirty liar. I was not overly concerned about Karen's attempts after her first failure. It was mostly just a source of stress because of how often she bombarded me, or the wonder if another fake allegation against me would appear. I learned a lot in my teenage years and childhood about what is legally allowed, and that was unfortunately given a crash course the year before I found this little paradise complex. I also use legal rights knowledge as a caregiver to help my clients stay safe from abusive sources or ones that would extort them. I know how and when to react and to always have proof to back up my end. And yeah, Elvin Blood, thank you so much for sharing this story about this seriously, absolutely nightmarish Karen neighbor. However, I'm so happy for you that this neighbor moved away, and it seems like you got a much better neighbor in exchange now. Honestly, it can be so stressful to have stupid neighbors. I gotta say, at the moment I wouldn't say I'm blessed with good neighbors, but at least they are not loud or anything, so they don't really annoy me while I am recording. The only thing they could work on is their parking skills. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. My family has been comprised of proud farmers that love what they are doing. However, recently we've been downsizing a little bit and sold a lot of our animals. We had 2 pieces of land a couple of kilometers away, so it was naturally divided between me and my elder brother. Our parents' house was near the larger plot, which my brother tended to, while I had to routinely go up and down the road to take care of the smaller plot. It was not an issue for me, considering the roads were mostly empty and whatever neighborhood we had around was pretty quiet and peaceful. But when we finally had some extra cash to spare, our dad decided to buy me a small place of my own near my land. It was not modern by any means, but it had more resources and luxuries than my old home, which I appreciated. He had also apparently installed CCTV cameras all around the house, which I thought was overkill, but would later come to realize that it wasn't. The first year went by easy. The neighborhood around my new place was livelier than the previous one, though it did pose some problems like children trying to free my chickens or diving face first into the fresh pack of manure I had bought. Still, overall, things were looking pretty good. A few weeks later, someone moved into the house that was being built beside my own plot for 6 months now. It finally seemed complete and I was actually looking forward to meeting with my neighbor. However, the moment I laid eyes on him from across the yard, I just knew he was going to be trouble. Still, I tried to make the first civil move. It went okay. He did not say much, mostly answering in non-committal hums and half-baked excuses, so I did not find any reason to continue talking. A couple more days pass and by now the other residents are also interested in the new person, though they too got shrugged off. I know it would be too quick to judge someone, but who in their right mind would ever turn down free homemade food? Anyway, I chose to ignore him, until one night I wake up to the loud noises of chickens clucking in my yard. I instantly reached for my shotgun before lunging off the bed, a bit confused since this had never happened before. I reached the chicken coop to find nothing more than its open door and a chicken clucking loudly, some of its feathers plucked as if it was struggling. I look around and still found nothing, not even footprints in the muddy part of my yard. It must be around 2 AM then and I was already tired from the day before, so I simply put the chicken back and decided to deal with it the next day. Unfortunately, the entirety of the next morning and afternoon was spent in traveling with my dad to some official who would help us grow our business, and by the time I reached back home, it was starting to get dark. I knew that it couldn't be the kids. They were rowdy and troublemakers, but they were not undisciplined enough to break into someone's house like that. Which also meant that there might be some burglar or thief roaming around. Now, this information was more concerning to me than anyone breaking into my chicken coop. Most people in this part were not used to robberies and hence kept their windows open, especially during rainy season when the breeze was cool at night. So as I went to bed, I decided that I would at least tell the town sheriff about the encounter I had the other day. Wake up and get ready to do just that after having a peaceful sleep. It's not like I expected the officials to start looking into the matter immediately, but I also did not expect the sheriff to basically ignore me with a simple wave of his hand like I was some cattle in his field. God, if it was not for the elderly residents, I would not have even approached these useless idiots. I returned home and decided to just complete some paperwork before sleeping my anger away. Maybe it was the combination of tension and irritation, but I don't notice the change in my yard until 3 days later. I squint my eyes to make sure that yes, there are several pots of plants missing. There's no longer a small money plant that my mom gave me last summer, no longer a tiny pot of cactus that I bought on a whim, not even the flame lily that I had been trying to grow for a month now. That night I made sure to stay alert, even going as far as to set up alarms, but nothing out of the ordinary happened. The next night I decided to follow the same routine, staying alert and cautious, but yet again, absolutely nothing happened. I was about to give up when on the 4th night I had heard a rustle near the window of my bedroom. After noticing that only expensive plants were disappearing, I had placed a fully bloomed bush of red roses under my window in hopes that this thief would be stupid enough to go for it. And guess what? He was. I tiptoed my way out of the house and around, raising my phone. It's not clear to me because it's almost pitch black, but on the screen the face is recognizable enough for me to realize that it's my a-hole new neighbor. I rustle the grass below my feet to have the thief running away before going back inside. The next morning the video is posted on the Facebook page of this town, and by the time I return from tending to the fields, the residents are all giving the new house sour looks. I could hear the loud gossips as my neighbor comes out to throw his trash out, his head down, but when he notices me, he raises his head and throws me a nasty glare. Not that it scares me in any way, I could literally see embarrassment oozing out of him. But it seemed like this one was shameless enough to continue to trespass on my property, digging up my vegetables, making a mess of my flowers and stealing more of my plots. I was almost about to break his nose when my dad suggested I simply put up an electric fence that would teach him a better lesson than anything else could. I followed his advice and hired the people for the job. Interestingly, my neighbor was away for the days that it took to set up the electric fences. Call me petty, but now I was almost looking forward to him being dumb enough to jump in my property. I did not have to wait long. The alarm linked to the electric fence goes off soon after I had gone to sleep, and while I'm groggy and irritated, I'm also done with all of this. So I take my trusty shotgun and run out to see this man almost convulsing on the ground, his face contorted in pain, and I would have felt bad if I hadn't noticed his hand going towards a small pistol nearby. As it was, I raised my shotgun towards the sky and fired a shot, effectively making the stupid man drop the pistol. I honestly wished it had ended then, but this donkey of a person gets up, takes out his phone and calls the police with the most crap-eating grin. All that time, I am just standing in the middle of the yard like, how stupid can a person be? Anyways, the police arrives and this man tries to pin the blame on me for having unsupervised electric fences that electrocuted him while he was taking a nightly walk. Not only is the excuse like the crappiest, it is clearly visible that the electric fence is behind the wooden one, so no passerby could be electrocuted until they jump in. You know, I should almost thank this man for calling the police and not the sheriff, because they were calm enough to listen to my story, take a look at the CCTV footage in my laptop and see the video I took of him when he was trying to steal my roses. As was expected, the police let me go and cuffs this numbnut of a human for breaking into a private property, trespassing and carrying unregistered arms. I did not honestly want him to go to jail for something like this because I knew he brought that pistol only to scare me, and I'm still glad he spent a few years behind bars, as in that time I was able to shift out of South Africa and never see his face again. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.